Hello, everybody. My name is Brett Grosspitch, and in today's podcast, I'll be interviewing a friend of mine and a fellow housemate of mine as well, Robert Hanna. Robert's lived around food and food culture and cooking since he was young, and today we're going to get into that, talk about his childhood, where he picked up cooking, and where he found his love for it. So, first off, Robert, it's nice to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Obviously I've learned a lot about you over the couple years and you've learned a lot about me, but today we're going to strictly focus on food. So my first question for you would be, when did you first realize food, culture of food, cooking was a part of your family?
Oh man, I can go back to being a little kid. I used to, two sides of family. One's American, one is Lebanese, Middle Eastern. So I already could tell a big difference in culture and how it implies into food and the restaurant business and everything like that. So I would say at a very young age.
That Lebanese culture, would you say that was more recognized than your American culture when it came to food, whether it was in the house, dinner, or just things that were around you, surrounded you?
Oh yeah, all the time. We always had different kinds of food, whether that's like traditional or, mixed in Middle Eastern with a little bit of American touch in it.
Mm-hmm. So definitely more Middle Eastern than American.
Oh yeah.
Where did that come from? That Lebanese culture.
My family's Middle Eastern, so I grew up in Lebanon until I was about 6 years old, and then it was just always a part of my life.
Mm-hmm. So throughout your life, you've been exposed to that culture and that cooking. When you came over to the United States, was it different for you at first? Was it kind of a culture shock?
Not really, because I was always, traveling in between both countries because I have a lot of family that lives here. So I was always in the swing of everything. But yes, I would definitely say living here is different than, just vacationing. And then you get to see a whole lot of shift of, how food starts shifting more towards American than Middle Eastern, but we always kept it around. We always kept the Middle Eastern food around.
So carrying over those Middle Eastern values, obviously, you would say your father predominantly had those aspects of the culture, correct?
Right. So my dad, let me cut to the chase here, he has always been into food. When we lived in Lebanon, he never owned a restaurant or anything like that, but when we did move here, he opened a Middle Eastern restaurant, and He put his own touch into it. I would say it's pretty much traditional, but it does have a little bit of American touch that attracts new customers to it that are not very used to the seasonings and all the other stuff that they use.
Could you possibly give an example of a dish, perhaps?
Sure. So the most ordered plate dish at the restaurant is his beef shawarma. And that's really popular because when people walk in, they get to see this big skewer of beef getting cooked right in front of them, and it just gets shaved off, and people love that. So I would say that's one of the most ordered dishes. It is very seasoned heavy. It has seasonings that you've probably never had before. So I think that would be the biggest challenge for him to, have people get acclimated into this new food that they're not used to.
Now, before we get any deeper, the name perhaps of your father's restaurant?
Right, it's La Odessa, which is an old term of the city that he used to live in.
Okay. And it's a successful business. It's been going on for how long now?
Yep, now 6 years, and when he actually bought the spot, it had a few changes. Longest it survived was 2 to 3 years with another business. He has made it run for 6 years so far. So
that's in your hometown in Massachusetts?
Yep, it's in West Bridgewater, Mass.
Okay. When you were around, the restaurant and your father growing through those 6 years, besides your childhood, put that to the side, did you notice anything? Did you pick anything up? Cooking-wise, food culture-wise, that you hold to yourself now? Values?
Absolutely. See, when you're working in the restaurant business, it's not going to be like your homemade dishes. It's going to be more, traditional dishes that people know, people want to try, and it's more like street food, So it's, I definitely picked up a lot from working there. I did work there for 2.5 years when I was back in high school. I picked up, some interesting things and cooking techniques that I now use when I cook for you guys here at the house.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's so interesting. It's aside from the questions that I'm going to ask you, just in general, like that culture aspect of it is so cool, because obviously I grew up with both my family members. My parents raised in Connecticut, and the cooking traditions were as simple as it got. Steak, chicken, something Italian, maybe pasta. There wasn't anything related to something as deep as that. So you hear stories from people as they grow up and their eating habits and what they're used to, and you yourself find that strange in a way, but that's the interesting part about food culture. And what I've learned through communications is that there's so many different values, traditions, ways of doing things, and if you can learn to accept those, you just open yourself to so much more.
Right.
Whether it's taste, experience, stories that you can tell others. So that's something that's pretty cool that I've always noticed. But personally for you, aside from your father's business now, what would you say, you cook for? Obviously, you cook for us, the guys who live in the house, which is fantastic. I've never had a bad meal cooked by you before. Seriously. But, some people cook for a hobby, maybe to relieve some stress, maybe because it runs in the family. But what do you cook for?
I think that cooking is like an art of its own. You get to be as creative as you want, and you get to do whatever you want. So there are, your traditional recipes and things, but people take that beyond and they start adding different things that really, bring out a flavor that you never even thought existed before.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm cooking, I'm having fun with it as much as possible. Trying to stay at a college budget, obviously, but it's more of a hobby, I would say, that I enjoy doing. And also I realize that I don't want to stereotype here, but a lot of guys don't know how to cook as much. So I think it's a good, little talent to have.
Yeah, you find interest in it.
Right.
It's something to bring to the table too that's good. I see it all the time when you cook. I can 100% tell you, being the youngest of 4 brothers, I am not the biggest cook. I mean, you watch me.
Would you say that you have picked up anything from watching me cook?
I think for the most part, it's so funny. We've talked about it in the last 7 minutes. The spices. When I watch you even cook a steak, the seasoning that you put on and the correct amount, even just the salt and pepper. It's watching my own father cook his steaks. I'm serious. He would usually just marinate it, leave it in the marinade, and then cook it. But he'd grill it. But watching you do that, and then fry it in the pan and sear it, and with the butter and everything. I mean, I've seen you do some pretty interesting things.
Yeah,
but
you just gotta have fun with it, man.
Yeah, 100%. Favorite dish? Get into that.
My favorite dish.
Let's say your favorite American traditional dish, and then your favorite Lebanese dish.
Okay. Well, I'm a big meat lover.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, a traditional, steak dish would be fantastic with a side of some, green beans or salad or whatever. I think a steak could go a long way with me. For Middle Eastern food, I would have to say a more vegetarian dish, which is a falafel wrap. It is one of the best things you can ever have. It has all the protein that you need. It's good for you, and you're not eating any meat. So if you want to have a vegetarian option, there's a lot of Middle Eastern dishes that can offer that to you.
I've seen falafel before. I've never tried it. Is it a meat?
No, it's not a meat. It's actually made out of chickpea and other stuff that are grinded together and formed into like a ball, and then they deep fry it.
And then they make that into the wrap, or put
it in a wrap.
Okay.
And then they add like veggies and other things, and then tahini sauce is also a Middle Eastern condiment that is used in a lot of dishes, and it's amazing.
So I've seen you use the tahini sauce in a couple meals. It's spicy, correct?
Oh, it's not really spicy. It has a little background flavor to it. It hits the throat a little bit. It's kind of like a syrupy kind of thing. You might be thinking about the garlic cream, which is another condiment that is a little spicier. Mm-hmm. And that's also used with the chicken shawarma and other chicken.
So Lebanese tradition is well, from what I've picked up at least, a lot of these spices and main ingredients. But what about meat? So you talk about meat in American culture. What about in Lebanese culture?
So Lebanese culture, you still have your steaks, your burgers, all of that, beef. But then you also get into lamb, and lamb is a big, dominant meat that we have in our culture, and it's good. I think that lamb can vary depending on how you cook it, but general ways that's what the meat that they go with.
See, I've never tried lamb before.
Really?
No, never. I've never talked to anybody that's tried lamb before.
We have to go to La Odessa and try some lamb.
Okay, let's
some lamb
go to
chops.
La
Those are good.
Odessa. Some lamb chops in La Odessa.
Mhm.
For sure, we'll put that down.
Yeah.
This has been another amazing podcast with Brett Grosspitch. Thank you very much, Robert, for coming in today. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yeah.